All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our workshop using the Google Ad Grant to support your arts and culture nonprofit. My name is Jessica, and I'll be hosting our live webinar today. As people are trickling in, getting settled, I want to run through some really quick logistics of our platform, Livestorm. So, first of all, Livestorm runs best on Google Chrome. So, if you're running into any technical trouble and you're an audience member, first of all, make sure you're using Chrome. Next thing you can do is try leaving and rejoining the session and updating your browser. If you're still having trouble, you can reach out to us in the moderators tab. My colleague Dana is backstage. She'll be happy to assist the best she can. Second, please feel free to leave your comments in the chat. And if you have a question that you would like me to answer during the Q&A portion, please leave it in the questions tab. If the chat gets busy, then that can get buried. So I encourage you to leave those questions there, and I will be sure to prioritize live questions over any that came in from registration. Last thing, this session is being recorded. The recording will be sent to you automatically afterwards. So if you have to hop early, if you arrive a little late or your connection drops, anything like that, don't worry. You will get the recording as soon as we wrap up here. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get things started and introduce myself. And while I am doing that, I would love it if in the chat you could drop where you are joining from. All right. So, to dive into just what the agenda is today, first of all, I'll introduce myself. Like I said, I would also love to give an overview of what the Google Ad Grant is. I always like to assume that there might be a few beginners in the audience, so I want to make sure that I'm really covering what that is. Then I want to talk really specifically about how you can use the Google Ad Grant to support arts and cultural organizations, as well as some common pitfalls that I see that I think you should avoid. And then I'll wrap up by taking any questions from the audience and also leaving my contact information up in case you want to connect after our webinar today. All right. So I am seeing lots of great stuff in here. We've got Brooklyn, New York. We've got Columbus, Georgia, not too far from me. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. So River Center for Performing Arts, shout out there. We got some people in Los Angeles. Oh, we got a Cowboys fan in Dallas. We got someone in Nova Scotia, Annapolis. Amazing. All sorts of people joining from all over the country. That's super exciting to see. All right. Well, I will go ahead and introduce myself. So, my name is Jessica, and I am the business lead at Getting Attention. I'm a digital marketer with over 6 years of experience in the mission driven sector, including search engine optimization, working on the organic side of Google, social media, and of course, paid search, which is where I hang out now. And to tell you a little bit about Getting Attention, we specialize in helping nonprofits get better results from the Google Ad Grant by partnering with experienced Google Ads experts from around the world. So, with that, I want to dive in first with an overview of what the Google Ad Grant is. So, the Google Ad Grant, for those of you who may not know, is a program from Google that provides up to $10,000 per month in what I'm going to call Google Search Ads credits for nonprofits. So, when I say search ads credits, what I mean there, you can think of it kind of like a gift card that you can spend on Google Search Ads specifically. So, basically, Google is giving you this $10,000 per month loaded up that you can spend in search ads. And just in case those of you are like maybe not super versed in the advertising world, what I mean when I say search ads is kind of exactly what it sounds like, the type of ads that pop up when you do a Google search. So right now you can see on my screen, I searched Comedy Museum and I was served an ad for the National Comedy Center, who's one of our clients. So they've got a couple of things going on here. First of all, their ad is really big. It takes up most of the real estate. If I was looking for a comedy museum, it would be hard for me to scroll past this and ignore it, right? The other thing they've got going on is they've got a few really key pages where people can kind of choose how they want to interact with the organization. So they've got links to their homepage. They've got a link to directions in case I want to figure out how to get there. They've got a link to the contact us page, as well as the Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz Museum, which is one of their kind of signature programs. And then they also have a donate link. So a few of their key things that they want to call out which is appearing right when I search for comedy museum. So it's very connected to what I'm searching. It appears well above all of the organic results. It's very eye-catching, and it would very likely drive me there and get my click. So that is the goal. That is the what of the Google Ad Grant. I want to talk a little bit about what types of organizations are eligible for the ad grant because I think this hopefully, we're talking to arts and cultural organizations today. I'm thinking probably most, if not everybody on this call is likely eligible, but just in case, I want to run through this as well. So, first of all, the ad grant is available in lots of different countries around the world. It is not a US exclusive thing. However, I'm based in the US. most of our clients are US based nonprofits, so I'm going to talk about the US requirements. These requirements are going to be really similar if you are, let's say, in Canada or Mexico or India. It's going to be really similar. You're just going to want to check with your kind of local authority on this. But you have to be a registered 501c3. And that is important. You do have to be a 501c3, so we can't have a 501c4, we can't have a 501c6, can't be a fiscal sponsored organization. It does have to be a 501c3, or again, if you're outside the US, whatever your local equivalent is, usually it's like a registered charity. So whatever that designation is in your country. And you have to have a high quality website. We will spend quite a bit of time talking about what makes a high quality website and a high quality landing page a little bit later today. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much for now. I'm going to delve more into what types of organizations are not eligible for the Google Ad Grant. So hospitals and healthcare organizations are not eligible. Schools and universities are not eligible, as well as government organizations. So I think for the group here, most likely, if you find yourself sitting in kind of a gray area, it probably either has to do with schools and universities. Maybe you do partnerships with schools or something like that. Maybe you're like a performing arts academy, something to that effect. This one is a little bit hazy, but what they are looking for basically is ideally, you would not have like a k12.us type of domain. Ideally, you would not be a like .edu. These things are not like the most important. What's really most important is like how are you registered with the IRS? So again, going back to that 501c3 thing. But those are some of the things that they're looking for. Similarly, with government, if you are a 501c3, my experience has been lots of sort of partnerships I have seen get approved for the grant. I think where it gets a little hazy would be if you are like, I'm making something up right now, but you're like the Georgia State Center for Visual Arts or something like that. That might get a little hazy, but what we are looking for here and to sort of take it one step back and give you a kind of rubric to go by of like what is the intent of this. Google is a private company giving a grant out to charitable organizations. Schools, universities, government organizations typically receive some sort of public funding. So this isn't official. This is just sort of my best guess from being in the space for a while, but my best guess is that Google is trying to avoid any sort of, appearances of impropriety from potentially giving organizations that are primarily publicly funded this grant. So I would look at it through that way. I always tell organizations when in doubt, if you think you might be eligible, go ahead and apply. It doesn't take too long. We're going to talk about how to apply in just a second here, but it's worth it if you think this is something that you want to take advantage of for your nonprofit. I've seen a lot of organizations that are a little bit of gray areas get approved, so this isn't a super, super strict program typically. All right. I told you we were going to talk about how to apply for the Google Ad Grant. It is actually a fairly simple process. Usually when our team does it, it takes a little less than 10 minutes. So all you got to do is like follow each of these steps in turn and wait for approval. So there's kind of an approval stage at the end of each one. So the first thing you are going to do, I would strongly recommend claiming your nonprofit on Percent. What Percent is that's Google's validation partner. So Percent basically acts as like a background checker for Google. So they go and they review all of the applications. They have a big nonprofit database. They kind of make sure that the people who are representing the nonprofit are actually associated with them, et cetera, et cetera. The reason to claim your nonprofit first is twofold. One, I just think profiles representing nonprofits should be claimed by people who work at the nonprofit. But the other reason for that is that you get everything squared away with the validation partner first, should make the rest of this process a lot smoother. The next thing you are going to do once you claim your nonprofit on Percent, you should get a notification that's like, hooray, you've done it. You've claimed your nonprofit. You're going to take that same email. You're going to apply for Google for Nonprofits. One recommendation I would make about this process, if possible, if your organization has organizational email addresses, so it's like your name at nonprofit.org, I would strongly recommend applying with that. The reason being, it is a lot easier to get approved because by using that organizational email, Google and Percent already have some idea that you are associated with the nonprofit. If you apply with your personal email address, that can sometimes get a little tricky. So I would recommend applying for Google for Nonprofits. This is a super easy stage. I think this is where a lot of people get hung up or get a little nervous, but they shouldn't. All you'll need your website, you'll need your mission statement or your vision statement. It doesn't have to be like a paragraph or anything. A couple of sentences will do, but ideally you're using whatever is published on your website already. And then your EIN. And So if you don't know how to get that, it's pretty easy. You can pick it up from the IRS database, but probably somebody at your organization knows what your EIN is. So you're going to take those things. You're going to go to Google for Nonprofits and you're just going to follow the instructions. They will basically say, hey, what's your EIN? Great. What type of organization are you? You'll pick from a drop down list. They'll say, great. Tell us about your mission and vision. Show us your website. You'll send all that and you'll hit submit. You should normally hear back from Google about whether you've been accepted to Google for Nonprofits in 1 to 3 days. I will say that recently, something we've been seeing across our clients is it has been taking a little bit longer. So I would say be patient. I think about 2 weeks is typically still within that like normal time frame. If you haven't heard from them for 2 weeks, it's worth bumping your application, reaching out to Google support, and just saying, "Hey, I haven't heard anything here." Sometimes you can get a response a little bit faster that way. But ideally, you have been approved for Google for Nonprofits. Here is the only tricky thing, and I will kind of share why I've like updated my recommendations here. You're going to next apply for the Google Ad Grant. And the way you do this is very, very simple. You log into Google for Nonprofits. There will be a list of products you're eligible for, like Google Workspace, which is like Gmail and Google Docs and all that good stuff. There'll be the Google Ad Grant, of course, Google Earth, and YouTube for Nonprofits. So you're going to hit a blue button next to the Google Ad Grant that says Activate. You'll watch a video. You'll check a box saying that you watched the video. You'll submit it. And that'll pretty much be that. That is the application process. One hiccup that we have observed recently that I will kind of give you a tip that we've seen so far be at least medium effective to get around. I mentioned that Google Workspace is one of the things that is available to you. We have increasingly on our end seen Google pushing nonprofits to try and get set up in Google Workspace right away. Basically, what that means is if your organization is currently on Outlook, so you're using like a Microsoft email, some non Gmail address, there's going to be one little baby step you're going to want to take when you're setting up your Google Ad Grants account, which is create a Gmail. It could be a throwaway one. You can use the Google for Nonprofits workspace if you want. Like, I don't think there's a strong case one way or another, but you'll need to add that as an admin for your Google for Nonprofits account, then use that to apply for the ad grants. Pretty much the same process from there. But the reason for that is that our observation has been what Google is trying to push people to get into Gmail. So if you set up a Gmail, you can just skip them saying that your email won't work. It will. They're just trying to get you to try their product. So that is the application step. It's really very simple. And again, when you apply for the ad grant, you'll wait 1 to 3 days is typical, but I've seen this process stretch a little bit longer. So I think on the very longer end, a month can sometimes be how long this takes, but usually you can get this moving within a week to 2 weeks. So that is kind of what we're looking at. Oh, by the way, I mean a month in total, not a month to wait for the ad grant. Usually the ad grant is like 1 to 3 business days up to about 2 weeks. All right. So we've talked about what the ad grant is. We've talked about who's eligible. We've talked about how to apply. I also want to talk about ad grant compliance for any of you who might be new to the ad grant, because there are some things that you want to keep in mind. That $10,000 per month does renew sort of like in perpetuity until and unless Google changes anything about the program. But there are some compliance factors that you'll want to be aware of. So the first is that each month you need to get at least one conversion. What I mean by that is that users have to take at least one meaningful action on your site. This is a kind of can be intimidating depending on what you set as your conversion action, but the good news is that conversions are in your control. So you can pick, and I do recommend picking, a variety of actions. It could be people leaving their email address. It could be people buying tickets. We'll talk about some other examples in a second, but you get to set what those are. So each month we need at least one conversion. We also need at least a 5% click through rate, which means that at least 5% of the people who see your ad need to click on it. We'll talk about some strategies that you can use that will make sure that your click through rate is pretty strong. But those are the two kind of main metrics that Google's looking at really rigorously every month. So those are the two that I really, if you take nothing else away, those are kind of the two to have in mind. There are a couple of other compliance factors though. You need to have good account structure. So you should be running multiple campaigns with varied ad groups. You don't want to just like throw everything in one big campaign and hope for the best. One, you won't get very good results that way because Google won't really know what to do with that. And two, it's just generally speaking not good account hygiene. So we want to make sure that we are grouping like with like and structuring our account logically. You also want to have good landing pages associated with your account. We are going to talk in really great detail about what makes for a good landing page in a second, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but basically users should have a good experience once they hit your website after they click on that ad. There are a couple of other things to know about the ad grant. So, if any of you have used a regular Google Ads account before, you have probably set a bid for how much a click is worth to you. That's sort of how Google calculates that 10,000 per month. It's like how much was a click worth times how many clicks did you get? So in a normal account, you could say a click on this is worth, $10 to me. In the ad grant, not quite the case. You have a $2 bid cap if you set it manually. There is a pretty easy way around that, which is to use the maximize conversions bid strategy. Goes back to also supporting that one or more conversions per month goal. But that's something to be aware of. The other thing to stay in good standing with the ad grant is you need to have a 3 or better quality score. So you need to have high quality keywords in your Google Ad Grant account. Again, this is one of those things that's kind of easy to understand if you think of it from Google's perspective as a company that exists to make money. They want to always be sending their users to good websites, good organizations, etc. So the more you have high quality keywords, the more Google is going to want to show your ads, drive users to your page, etc. They don't want you to be using this $10,000 budget to show up on like really scammy keywords or spammy keywords that are low quality. So those are kind of the basics of ad grant compliance. I told you I would talk a little bit about uses, and I think this is something that I see organizations get stuck in one place and not kind of imagine other possibilities. So, one of the most common uses, and I would argue probably one of the best uses for the Google Ad Grant, is awareness building. So, this is what the Ad Grant is like really, really good at, really designed to do. It is designed to go find people who may or may not be aware of your organization, but who are searching for terms that are relevant to you, bring them in. I think one smart conversion to pair with your awareness building goals is some sort of capture of contact information. So, a really common way I see people do this is driving email signups. If you have like a contact us form, you could also set that as a conversion. Calling is another one that I see a lot. But these are those awareness goals. So maybe somebody hasn't exactly done a transaction, maybe they haven't signed up for a program, but they've reached your site and ideally, if we've paired this information capture, they've even said, I'd like to learn more. I'd like to stay in touch. May not be ready to take the next step right now, but I'm interested. A lot of people will kind of stop there and assume that's all that the Google Ad Grant can be used for. At Getting Attention, we have not had that experience. We usually will actually be very conversion focused. And so I think that there are a couple of good conversions that arts and culture organizations can take advantage of with the Google Ad Grant. The first one, of course, is ticket sales. You can use the Google Ad Grant to highlight tickets that are available for purchase, as well as other revenue driving opportunities. So, like merchandise sales, program signups, like if you have paid workshops that you do, things like that. I run into the misconception quite a bit that the Google Ad Grant can't be used for commercial purposes. And I think it's like a slight misunderstanding of what the policy is. The Google Ad Grant can't be used for commercial purposes in the sense that you are not a business, right, that is running an ad grant to promote your business. If you articulate on your website what the proceeds go to, so like proceeds from ticket sales go to funding our educational outreach, whatever, what have you, that you are actually allowed to do with the Google Ad Grant. So it's not a situation where the Google Ad Grant can't be used for any sort of like money involved interaction at all. It's more that you can't use it in like a purely business way. I think that gets misunderstood a lot. And we have a lot of organizations that do ticket sales, and we do that pretty well with the Google Ad Grant. So that's a huge one, I think, for the types of organizations I'm talking to you today. Other big ones, you can promote upcoming events with your Google Ad Grant. So this is another one where you can promote your mission focused community events. So maybe you've got like a Shakespeare in the Park thing going on. Maybe you've got an open exhibit. Maybe you've got something like that. Um, that is, of course, fair game. You can also promote fundraising events. So let's say you've got like a fundraising 5K or a golf tournament. You can also use those in your Google Ad Grant, and you can use that to spread the word and get signups. The last thing that I would probably recommend for arts and cultural organizations is recruiting volunteers. So you can find folks who are in your area who are searching for topics that are related to your cause. And I like this as a method to recruit volunteers. I like this a little bit more than the sort of like spray and pray method, which would be targeting things like volunteer opportunities near me. You will get local folks, but they may or may not care about your organization. If you think about the type of person who's going to want to volunteer with, say, like a community orchestra, it's going to be a little bit different than the type of person who wants to volunteer with like a food bank, right? Both really noble, completely different causes. So I'm a fan of keeping the cause kind of at the forefront and then looking for driving people to your volunteer pages in that way. All right. So we've kind of talked really broadly. We've already kind of dialed into a couple of uses. I want to talk on a more tactical level now about how you can use the Google Ad Grant to support your nonprofit. So, like, what are the actions that we are taking with this Google Ad Grant account in order to support the nonprofit? So, before I dive into the nitty-gritty, one of the things that I want to just like run through really quick, because I know advertisers and digital marketers, we get used to like using these phrases all the time, but I think it's always good to sort of like set the table stakes. I want to walk through the anatomy of a search ad so that when I use all of these terms, you know what I'm talking about. So, the first thing, and this is going back to that Comedy Center example that I shared a little bit earlier, you can see that search bar that says Comedy Museum. That's number one. That is the search query. That's also sometimes called the keyword. So, Comedy Museum would be the keyword. This, in short, is what triggers the ad. So, something that I think is kind of important just for generally understanding how Google Ads works. How Google decides to show an ad is it looks at a keyword and it makes a snap decision every time that keyword is searched on what ad to show. This is why if you search the same keyword, let's say on your computer versus your phone, you might get different results. Google's going to interpret those two inputs. You're the same person, maybe you're still in the same room in your house, but you're on two different devices. That might trigger different ads to show. Similarly, if you search at different times of day, if you were to drive across town to your friend's house, you might get different results. That's because Google is kind of constantly and on a like instantaneous basis making a judgment about what's going to perform best. So we've got our keyword that triggers the ad. Next, you can see in purple, number 2, it says Comedy Museum, National Comedy Center. That is the headline. So the headline of the ad, one thing to keep in mind, this should include your keyword or a close variation of it. So you can see I searched Comedy Museum. Comedy Museum is right in the headline. That is kind of what told Google that this was going to be a relevant example or a relevant ad rather for me with my search term. The ad text is what comes right underneath that, and it provides more details. It's good to include keywords there too, if possible. The other thing you'll notice is that Google is going to start bolding synonyms or things it thinks are related to you. So in this ad text, it says, get inspired by the time honed creative process that has elevated comedy. So it bolded that because comedy is related to Comedy Museum to an art with over 50 deeply funny comedy. It sees funny as a synonym, so it's showing me that exhibits, right? So that ad text is a chance to both kind of add a little flavor, entice your user, and it also, again, reinforces how your ad is related to the thing they were searching and what they're looking for. All of these blue links you see underneath are site links. You can use these to drive users to other key pages. And then the last part of the ad that I want to call out is the image there. It's kind of colorful. It draws the eye, more eye-catching and just kind of folds in. So Google kind of dynamically chooses how many of these to show at any given time based on what it thinks will perform best with the user. So just keep aware, kind of some awareness of that in your mind. All right. So now that we understand like what even makes up a search ad, then how are we going to break down like what should we even be writing in them? That is how you get into the keyword research process. So the tool that you are going to use for this job, I would recommend using Google Keyword Planner. It's available in your Ad Grant account. It's pretty easy to use and it'll give you all of these metrics that I'm about to discuss. So that would be my recommendation for you. You want to be looking for a few different things. And I wish that there was like a hard and fast number that I could tell you on the call, like for search volume as an example. I wish I could be like, 100,000 is a great number and anything less than that is bad. The reality of it is that it is going to vary a ton based on your local area, based on your mission, based on potentially the time of year. So search volume is kind of averaged out. But generally speaking, what we are looking for is higher because we want more people searching for our terms, right? So volume is how many people are looking for your term in a given month, your keyword in a given month. Competition is another one. So Google kind of sorts this into low, medium, high, which is useful. There is more granular data, but if you're just getting started, I think low, medium, and high is good enough for this discussion. This is basically a measure of how many other advertisers want to appear on your keyword. The good news about the Google Ad Grant is that you are competing directly with other nonprofits. You are not competing with like businesses for the ad slots. Sometimes what that means is there can sometimes be a trade-off between where your ad appears on the page. Sometimes you'll appear at the top of the page, sometimes you won't. Google wants to get paid first before they give charity slots away. Unfortunately, that's sort of just the system we're in. But when you're looking at competition, ideally we want to be looking for lower competition. So lower competition seems pretty straightforward. You're going to be fighting with fewer people. It's more likely your ads are going to appear. Things that impact, there are more factors by the way than this that impact how your ads appear, but these are some of the easiest ones to identify at the keyword research process. Your landing page has a huge impact on how your ads appear. We're going to spend a ton of time talking about that in a bit. All right. The last thing you want to keep an eye on, and this is not one that you have a ton of control over, but you want to keep an eye on cost per click. So this is, like I said, when Google triggers that ad, it determines what the cost for one click on that ad is going to be. Google prices their ads dynamically. So as an example, I think this is probably like the clearest one. If you were to advertise, let's say on like Black Friday, right? It's coming up very soon for the Americans on the call. You can imagine that in November, that's going to be a much more precious piece of advertising real estate than it would be in like February or March, right? It's not as relevant anymore. So that cost per click might go down. So these are the types of things that weigh in. If you are using a maximize conversions bid strategy, which I would recommend, what that means is that Google's machine learning within your account is going to set the bid. So basically, it's going to say, Google's sort of two robots are going to talk to each other. The Google robot inside your account is going to say, hey, auction robot, I think this is worth, let's say $8 a click. And the auction robot's going to say, yeah, that sounds correct for this auction. Let me show this ad. And then anybody who clicks on your ads at that point in time would be charged, or your account would be charged $8 per click. If it was a different time of day, let's say it's 12 hours later, the Google robot inside your account is going to say, hey, based on this worst time of day, I'm going to say this is worth $4 per click. And the Google auction robot might say, yeah, okay, $4 per click sounds correct. And then you'll get charged $4 per click. So that's kind of how that works. When you are doing keyword research, what you want to be looking for really with CPC, the reason I don't think this is like a huge factor is it will adjust. But what you want to be looking for is something that basically doesn't cost so much that you're going to burn through that $10,000 budget right away. So I think a good like anchor point, there's no one hard and fast number, but if I had to give you like an anchor point, $10 or less, you can get a decent number of clicks with that and have that ad grant budget be really useful. There are other considerations that you're going to want to make on like an ongoing basis about this. So for example, if a certain group is really likely to buy tickets, but it costs, let's say, $20 per click to bring them in, that doesn't necessarily mean you should remove that keyword and that group of people. These are going to be people who are kind of doing the thing you want them to do, and it's $10,000 of free money. So we want to make sure that we're kind of keeping our priorities in line there. But generally speaking, if you're looking for some guardrails just to get started, I think $10 or less cost per click is a reasonable place. That sweet spot is going to be the mix between high volume, lots of people searching, and low competition. This means that like your ads, when they show, good chance they're going to give you a high bang for your buck. What we want to avoid are the really competitive and not that searched terms. These ones just very unlikely. You know, things that are highly searched and highly competitive, I think sometimes those can be worth it. It depends on how high quality your landing pages are. And then things that are low competition, low volume, probably pretty easy to win, may or may not be useful for your organization. So that is keyword research. That's what we're doing on the kind of back end to even determine what type of words, what type of searches are we even showing our ads on. The next things we want to do is make sure that we are kind of putting them together in a cohesive way within the account. So when you are selecting your keywords after you've done the research, you've got like, 200 possibilities, whatever you have. You want to choose keywords that are relevant to your organization. Please do not make the common mistake that I see of really generic keywords like events or best nonprofit. You are unlikely to appear. It is way more likely that Google is going to show some other type of search function rather than your nonprofit. It's just not going to be valuable. And there's no guarantee that somebody who's searching best nonprofit is even interested in an arts nonprofit. They may be really passionate about like dog rescues or something like that, right? It may have nothing to do with you. So I wouldn't waste your time and money there. Headlines need to feature the keyword that you're hoping to show up for. This builds the relevance of your ad to the search intent of the user. So when I talk about search intent, what I mean there is like, what is the user hoping to find when they search for a given term? One good way, if you're not like 100% sure, you're looking at a keyword and you're going, like this could be valuable or it might not be. Um, Go ahead and punch that in Google in an incognito window and see what pops up. That's what Google believes most people are looking for. And really, whenever you're working with Google, you kind of want to get on board with what Google believes because it has the data from the billions of people who do Google searches each day. All right. Ad text, again, we want to be thinking about why someone would want to click on your links and engage with your organization. So again, in all things, you want to have that target keyword ideally, but what you really want to be building is like that sense of intrigue. Like, why should someone want to click on this ad, right? And lastly is your landing page. And we're going to talk in more detail about this in a second. But your landing page should match what the user expects to see. So if you have a programs link, don't send people to your donations page, right? You get to choose what the name is that's like highlighted in Google Ads. So, you can modify the name a little bit. Like as an example, if we did want to run ads to our donations page, we could write like support us or something like that, right? But that still gives people an idea that they're going to your donation page. We don't want to hit programs and then send people right to the donation spot. That's not good. The reason that all of these and this sort of like continued relevance is important is that you kind of, through your ads results, develop a reputation with Google as an advertiser. We call this ad rank. So, what that means is basically Google is going to prefer to show ads from advertisers it knows and trusts. It knows that people are going to, generally speaking, have a good experience. It's a high quality organization, et cetera. So, the sort of flip side of that is one, you are more competitive in the ad auctions, like when you're asking Google to show your ad on these different keywords. The other side effect of that is that you can sometimes show up more cheaply. So you can imagine, like, if someone searched tennis shoes and let's say both Nike and like Louis Vuitton wanted to show up, right? Nike is going to be way more relevant to the search of tennis shoes and is going to be well trusted by Google as an advertiser. They're going to get that cost per click at a pretty affordable rate. Whereas Louis Vuitton, they may have tennis shoes, and like, sorry if anybody from Louis Vuitton is like on this call and is like, we have a respectable tennis shoe line, but not really what people associate with them, right? So instead, they're going to get that. They might get that click. Google might be willing to show them, but it's going to be much more expensive for them because Google's going to say, I'm not sure this is really what people are looking for, right? So to bring that back to your nonprofit, increasing that relevance, making sure that there is just like a clear thread between what the user wants, what you're offering, and sort of what Google can read is important so that way Google says, yeah, I trust that. That's a good ad. I'm going to show that one. All right. So I've been promising that we are going to talk about landing pages for a little while here. Landing pages determine the relevance of sort of your like content to the ad. So Google is a little bit different than a human user, right? Like a human user can look at a page and make a quick analysis of like, is this relevant? Is this useful, etc. But to even be shown to the human user in the first place, we need to please Google. We need to please the robot. So we need to think about how the robot reads the page. There are a couple of things that act as on-page signals for Google. First of all, headings are a big one. So H1s, H2s, etc. They should contain your keyword or keyword variations. In this example that I've got on the slide, it says every student deserves good mental health. Erica's Lighthouse is an organization that promotes mental health for school-age kids. So student, mental health, all in there. Text is also really important. So Google is really best right now at reading text. So your keywords and variations, they should appear throughout your page, throughout your text, and you should have enough information on the page that Google can read it and also that your users can read it and kind of understand what you're doing. I've seen a strong push to visuals, and I think that that's overall good because most people do not want to see just like a wall of text, right? They're not that interested in reading it. They're more interested in kind of the visual and dynamic content. But the flip side of that is Google is not very good at reading images yet. So alt text is another thing that you can incorporate that will help Google understand what your pages are about. It's also a best practice for accessibility for people maybe with visual impairments who are using screen readers to look at your website. The other thing it's good for is if people have a bad connection and can't get your website to load fully, having that alt text, that's what appears if the image does not. So if the image doesn't load, the alt text will. And so it's also just beneficial even for people who don't need screen readers. The last thing that Google can use as an on-page signal is anchor text. So links and that text that you use to encase them, a really common example you'll see is it'll say like read more and have it in blue, but it might also be like our tips for better stage makeup or what have you, right? The links and the text that you use tells Google how different pages and different topics are related to each other. So broadly speaking, that is how your landing pages determine your relevance. I want to dive into a couple of different examples here from like real arts organizations that we work with to kind of show you some examples of how this can look in practice. So, this first one is from the National Comedy Center. They've got a couple of H3s that I want to call out. Like they have Stand Up Showcase, they have Nicole Byer. H3 is basically a heading, it's just like a lower down version of the heading, which means those ads are eligible to show up when people are searching for those types of things. So if I were in or near Jamestown, New York, and I were searching Nicole Byer, I would probably be served an ad that says, hey, we've got tickets to see Nicole Byer, right? And that would be very relevant. There's also a really digestible description of the event that has related keywords like comedy, like late night shows, things like that. The types of people who are interested in this content also going to be looking for those types of things. There is a really clear call to action. So there's these bright pink purchase tickets buttons. There's also sold out is on a couple of these for any tickets that are unavailable. This is helpful both um, actually pretty much primarily for the human user because the human user, one, might need to know if things are sold out, but two, we always want to be telling people what that next step is once they land on the web page. So if you are hoping that people will buy a ticket, that people will donate, make it really obvious and make it really easy for them. The average sort of internet user, you can assume they are skimming your page. So right now, if you have it linked in like tiny text and it says buy tickets, people may not be seeing that. These big bold buttons really stand out and it's like very obvious. Like, okay, if I want to buy a ticket, there it is. The other thing I want to call out about this page, it's not too wordy. Like you don't look at this and go, I don't know how I'm going to read all of that, right? The average internet user, again, is skimming the page. It offers information about the venue. It offers some price for information for each event, which also improves the user experience. All right, I want to show you another example. This is from our client, Hot House West. So they are a small acoustic music organization based in Salt Lake City. So they've got some educational programs that they are in the process of building, and this is their page that like talks about that. So their H2 reads hands-on learning, very related to music education, and they've got some other variations like rote learning. The text on the page, again, features the keyword acoustic music, which is a core keyword for them, and it provides some helpful information that kind of helps meet the search intent. So like, how are they building these education programs, right? The other thing I want to call out, that little orange square on the side is a donate button. It is high contrast, it's in orange, and it follows you all the way down the page. So donations, in addition to ticket sales and all the usual stuff, are another important outcome for this client. So they've made it very easy for somebody to donate at any given time. I also really like, it's harder to read just with the size of the screenshot, but this page does a really good job of giving a roadmap of where the educational programs will go, which gives supporters a reason to stick around. So usually we will, like I said earlier, pair awareness outcomes with some sort of like concrete action, like sign up for our newsletter. If you were in a position where you're rolling this out and maybe you've got only a couple of limited education programs, but you're going to provide more, maybe you've got a wait list. These are great examples of things you should be telling your user on the page and then directing them to, hey, sign up for our wait list, sign up for our newsletter, be the first to know about when we've got these great things coming out because we're working hard for you. We want you to be, ready and able to go. So that's Hot House West, excuse me. The last example I wanted to share, we work with an organization called Metal Arts Guild of Georgia. So this is a metalsmithing, jewelry making organization. So this is their classes and workshops calendar page. It is not anything crazy fancy, but I think it's very effective. So first of all, that H1 reads classes and workshops, and their URL kind of has metal arts. So if someone was searching something like jewelry classes, jewelry workshop, metalsmithing classes, Google, both on the content on the rest of their site and the content on this page, is going to see those things as very relevant. It's going to be very likely to show, especially to local users. The text for the various events also include really relevant keywords like metalsmithing and fabrication. Something I didn't put on the slide, but I like that there's like an image, there's an example of like what could someone create or what has the instructor made to kind of give you a vibe for what you're going to learn. This is what I would consider a good like middle of the funnel page. So when we talk about the funnel, usually at the top of the funnel, there's like people awareness, they're kind of searching around, they're vetting their options. Middle of the funnel is like, I know what I want, but I don't know who I want it from. Bottom of the funnel is like, I'm ready to make a purchase, right? So this is a good middle of the funnel page that's got some opportunities. So somebody who's like, I know I want to take a class, but I don't know which one. They can scroll through this, they can see all the upcoming ones, and then they can go to the specific event page to actually check out once they're interested. So that's a really effective place to capture that like middle traffic. The other thing that I really like about this page, there are lots of opportunities for users to click for more information. What this does is it both increases the time on site and it offers the ability to track more diverse conversions. So when we think about conversions, basically, if it is a behavior that somebody takes on a website that can be measured, you could call that a conversion. So examples of conversions we might use, we don't use these often for our clients, but sometimes we'll incorporate them, might be like, did they spend 10 minutes on the site? That's going to be someone who's really engaged, right? Did they click on a donate link? This is a super common one. If your donation page is hosted off-site, then clicking on the link, that's kind of the best information Google will have. But we can find people who are likely to click that link. Similarly, did they look for directions? Did they click your maps icon, right? Like these are also clues that give you an idea about how engaged your audience is. So I like a page that has lots of opportunities for users to interact because it gives people the opportunity to interact in different ways. You can measure those, and then you can use that to kind of inform your strategy moving forward. All right, I want to talk specifically about event landing page features as well, just to kind of begin to close things out here, because I think that there are a few recommendations I would make based on kind of what I've seen be successful for our clients. The first would be I would strongly, strongly recommend if you are promoting events that you should have some sort of RSVP function, some sort of button to click, etc., for conversion tracking. So, not quite an arts and culture organization, but one of our clients did do like a camping excursion. This was an event that they were promoting, and you see they have that bright orange register button. That's great because we can track how many people clicked on that, and that's going to enable us to basically tell Google, hey, find us more people who will click this button. So that's super important. Something I see on event pages a lot that I think undermines actually the efficacy is like a call us in order to let us know you're coming or something like that. Something that's going to take people off the website, make it harder to track. That means it's also going to be harder to tell Google, find us more people who will do this thing. Other things we want to make sure we're including. We do want to make sure we're including event information. So people who are skimming your site should be able to really quickly find key event information like date and time. These are just some basics that are going to be beneficial. The other reason that having these things are beneficial is that you want to make sure that like Google, the robot, can read and pick up on stuff because you can run types of ads that will sort of be evergreen and updating, which means that if your dates are on the website, Google can even pull that as a relevant thing. So, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, we're coming up on the holiday season, lots of great opportunities for events, lots of great opportunities for Google to be pulling those and showing them in ads and maybe inspiring people who are looking for, hey, I'm visiting my parents over the holidays. Like, I think we're going to get bored by day two. Like, what are some events going on around me? What are some things going on in that area that I can be looking into, right? And the last thing, If you take, again, one other thing away, the first thing you got to take away is one conversion, 5% CTR. The only other thing I want you to take away is that your keywords really power Google. Keywords are the underlying thing that Google knows how to read. So to be able to run effective search ads, your events pages, as well as your other landing pages, need to feature important keywords. So I pulled an example from a different organization that we work with, but they have like a foster care informational meeting. So that foster care, Texas, which is where they're based, right? Like all of these things, virtual information, virtual foster care, these things tell you more about what you can expect from that. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about are some common Google Ad Grant mistakes that I see that I want to encourage people to avoid. Because we've talked a lot about like what are the things that will help you succeed. I want to cover a couple of really common mistakes that I see. So the first one would be limiting yourself to awareness only outcomes. So when I say awareness only, what I really mean is like somebody landing on your page, right? There's some value in that you have brought a new person to your website. But if that person doesn't take another action, like signing up for emails or calling you, or ideally buying a ticket or signing up for an event or registering to volunteer or making a donation, right? Those are the things that move the needle for your organization. Those are kind of where we want the account to go. Usually when folks come to me and they're like, I think the Google Ad Grant is like kind of cool, but I see limited use for it. Most often what they're doing is sort of running a page view conversion. That can be useful, especially as you're getting the account up and running, but that's not the end state of like what we want the account to be doing for us, right? So we want to make sure that we are adding those useful, valuable conversions, and that we're kind of attaching conversions even to our awareness actions, right? Because somebody giving you their email, that's not the same thing as somebody buying a ticket, but that's still somebody who is engaged enough, who raised their hand and said, I want to learn more. We want to make sure we're following up with them. The flip side of that, of course, is bid strategies. This is something that should be super simple, but we want to be using a maximize conversions bid strategy. We do not want to be using a manual bid strategy. Another common mistake I see is using a maximize clicks bid strategy. Unfortunately, that one is also subject to that $2 bid cap. So really max conversions is what you want. Don't I would not mess around with some of the other ones. So that is like the big one, is limiting yourself to awareness only outcomes. Another really common mistake I see people make is targeting your campaigns too locally. This is something that I think makes sense if you are running a regular paid ads account, but in an ad grant account, makes no sense at all. So, what I will see organizations do is they'll be like, well, we're fairly local, right? Maybe we're located in a smaller town. So, it's not like, we're not the Smithsonian Museum, right? Like, people aren't searching for us from around the world, et cetera. So, we only want to target like a 50-mile radius of where we're located. There's a few things that that does that kind of negatively impacts the efficacy, excuse me, of your account. One, it limits the search market pretty greatly because you got to figure the people in that 50-mile radius probably a lot smaller than if you were to target, say, the whole US. The other thing that does is it really relies on Google having up-to-date information about where you're located. I'm sure if you've done any searches on your phone on Google, you are aware that Google will both desperately want you to sign in and desperately want you to share your location every single time you do a search. If you are like a lot of people, you probably just ignore it or you stay signed out or you don't share your location or whatever, which means that Google's information is kind of limited. So if someone, let's say, normally lives in New York, they're on vacation in Salt Lake City, if we had only limited it to people who are kind of in a radius of Salt Lake City, Google's most up to date information about where that person is might be in New York. So they might not even get served the ad, even though, like Hot House West, as an example, would be really relevant to them and really relevant to what they're looking for in Salt Lake City. So those are a couple of effects. The thing that I also think people probably don't realize about Google is that it's very smart. It gets better and better over time at showing you things that are relevant to you and at finding where your audience is. So I don't think that organizations should be too concerned about, especially when they're spending Google's money, which is what they're doing with the ad grant. I don't think you should be too concerned with showing your ads to the wrong audience or something like that. Google will learn really, really quickly who your best audience is. So I would recommend casting that net really wide, giving Google more data to work from rather than casting a really limited net and limiting Google's ability to take in data and sort of find those best things for you. The last common ad grants mistake to avoid is trying to advertise on keywords that appear nowhere on your website. This is something I see all the time, and I think that a lot of nonprofits would find the ads experience a lot less frustrating. They kind of really took to heart that, like, if you want to show up for a keyword, that's fine, you can do it, but the keyword has to appear somewhere on your website, or a very close variation of it has to appear somewhere on your website, or else Google's not going to recognize that as relevant to you. Um, m- there is a question that I sometimes get of like, does every single campaign need an individualized landing page? The answer for that is usually no. And in fact, with a lot of our clients, we'll use the existing content that's on their site. Sometimes you can just make some small modifications to your existing page to include that keyword. That improves Google's understanding of what your page is about and allows you to keep going without dedicating, hours and hours of your team's time to updating your website all the time. So my recommendation would be, if you are trying to show up on a keyword, take a look at it, take a look at your website, see, does this appear anywhere? If not, consider adding it, and then you'll probably experience a lot better success. All right. That is what I have for you guys today. I hope you learned something from the webinar today. I would love to take any questions that people might have. If you have any questions for me, you can go ahead and leave them in the questions tab, or the chat has been relatively quiet, so I think I can keep an eye there. I see someone's typing, so while they are typing, I will go ahead and take one of the questions from registration. So one of the questions that I got during registration was, what is a good CTR? So we talked about how the click-through rate to keep the ad grant is 5%. Like, what is a good CTR? The answer is, a good CTR is what is a good CTR for you. So to walk that back a little bit, CTR is one of those things, again, that's click-through rate, so what percentage of people who saw your ad clicked on it. CTR is one of those things where, because it is a ratio, there are lots of factors that can affect it, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right? So if we were to think about, like, if if your ad was shown to 10 people and 5 people clicked on it, that'd be a 50% CTR, right? Like 1 in 2 people who saw your ad clicked on it. We would be feeling pretty good. But if your ad was shown to, let's say, 200 people and 20 people clicked on it, that's going to be a like much smaller CTR, right? 10%, I think, but math is not my strong suit. So you might look at that and you might go, oh my God, our CTR dropped like 40%. This is horrible. It's actually not, though, because you got way more people into your website. Your ad was shown to way more people. Like, in terms of building up the account, that's actually a good thing. So I think that, 5% is really what you want to be aiming for, just because that's what's required to keep the account. But it is not, that's not the end all be all. I think what is more important is to look at, what are the conversions you're getting? How many clicks are you getting? And, how is that CTR trending over time? That's going to tell you a lot more than any one number will. All right, we got a couple of questions in the chat. So the first question from Phi or Fee, apologies if I mispronounced that, is there an acceptance percentage of how many applicants are successful for the Google Ad Grant? That is a great question. So as far as the program itself, like limitations, there is not really a limitation on how many nonprofits can get the ad grant. It's not something where Google only gives out 500 of them a year or anything like that. If I were to say just anecdotally what the acceptance percentage is, it's pretty close to 100% in my experience. Usually the nonprofits that I see get rejected from the Google Ad Grant. There's usually a handful of reasons that might happen. One would be if Google has determined, for whatever reason, that they are an ineligible organization type. So maybe they're a healthcare organization, or maybe Google's determined that they are a government organization, right? The other common reason, and this is pretty easy to fix, is if you have like a slow load time, that can be a factor in getting rejected for the ad grant. The good news about that is, like, there are really simple fixes. Sometimes you can just reapply. Like, if your website normally loads perfectly fine and you get that feedback, sometimes what we've done with clients is just reapply on a different day. If the website loads normally that day, they'll say, great, you did it. Here's your ad grant. So sometimes you can just reapply. The other thing you can do is like shrink the file size of images on your website, sort of remove some of the distracting stuff that might cause your pages to load slowly. But like, poor website experience is the only other kind of main category of rejection that I have seen for the ad grant. The other thing I want to mention about like ad grant acceptance, rejections, things like that, is that like you can reapply. It's not like a one strike you're out type of situation. So if you apply, let's say they reject your website, they're like, hey, this isn't high quality enough. You go through again and you update your website, you think it's loading better, maybe you run some tests on some of the free software that's out there and it's loading better. Then I would reapply. And usually I've seen that be successful on the second go. All right. And then Alyssa asks, is there a recommended balance for running grant search ads in tandem with paid search ads? This is a great question. So you are allowed to have both a regular old paid account, businesses, nonprofits, people, anybody can have that, right? And you can have an ad grant account. As far as like the balance goes, I will say that in my experience, because there are fewer restrictions on a paid search account, it is typically a little bit easier to get those to work, right? Like if you are working with a vendor, or even if you're working with like someone on your team, maybe it's a volunteer who has done paid ads for their business before, right? Like this is a common situation I see, especially in like smaller or mid-sized nonprofits. It's not too hard to make the paid ads account work. The Google Ad Grant account is really cool because it is basically a account with a bunch of free money in it to spend, but there's those restrictions on it. What I usually will recommend for folks is to try and shift what you've been doing in your paid account to your ad grant account. This is a common thing we do with a lot of our clients who are trying to reduce their overall marketing spend. They'll bring us on board. They'll say, hey, how can we make this ad grant work better? And then if we can start getting similar results in the ad grant account, then of course we can wind back or walk back what we're doing in the paid account. This works especially well if you have like a one-to-one search ads and search ads. If you're using your paid account to do like display ads, which are those like graphics that like follow you around the internet. I bought tickets to Disney World once, and I have never stopped seeing their ads since. These are a little bit different. You won't be able to do that in an ad grants account, but you can in the paid account. So there might be some reasons that you would keep the paid ads budget static, or you might like reinvest differently. But as far as recommended balance, I think for most nonprofits, it makes a lot of sense to try and maximize that spend, try and get as much going as you can in the ad grant account first. I'm also a huge fan of making the ad grant account conversion focused rather than awareness focused. But I have also seen, and different marketers will have different opinions on this. So you can always, shop around and see who you agree with. But my philosophy on this is like if we can make Google's money work harder for us and work better for us, and we can reduce the amount we're actually spending with Google, I see that as a win for most organizations. Some would say that, like, maybe the awareness goals and just sort of the awareness outcomes should be all you do in the ad grant account. You just max out that budget, but you don't care if people convert. And then some people will run like a paid ads campaign on the side. I would consider that to be a little bit of an inefficient use of budget. So I'm not a huge fan of that tactic, but that is something I've also seen done. So there's probably not one like ideal balance, but I strongly recommend just like trying recreating what you're doing in the search ads account in your ad grant account and seeing what kinds of results you get there because we have often found that we can get similar or better results in the ad grant account sometimes than the search account. And then the more you can spend Google's money, I think the better for that. All right. I think we have time for one more question. So if anyone is sitting here and going, I have this other thing that I was wondering about, feel free to pop it in the chat. Okay. Alyssa's got another one. Is there a sweet spot for the number of grant ads that should be active at one time? This is a great question. So part of it is going to vary based on a couple of things. It's going to vary based on how many or how much of the ad grant you're like currently spending. So if you are already spending that full 10K each month, adding new ads is probably pretty unlikely to actually get you more benefit. What you want to be looking at is like, okay, can we make our current spend more efficient? And if we can't make it more efficient, then is there stuff we could pause or stuff that's maybe not in line with where we're trying to go, free up some space. You can also just ratchet down the budget. The other thing I'm a fan of is being pretty aggressive in the ad grant account because again, it is Google's money we're spending here. So you could also just like ratchet back the budget on one campaign in order to be able to launch another campaign. I think another thing that's helpful because this is a topic that comes up a lot with our clients is like this question of like how many ads. That's a little bit of the wrong question to be asking just because what Google does is it like takes the headlines, it takes the ad texts, it takes the images, it kind of mixes and matches them into whatever combination it thinks is going to be most appealing to the user. So it's probably a little bit more useful to think of it in terms of like campaigns. Campaigns have like a set of ad like assets or ad pieces, and it has a set budget. And so you can create however many campaigns theoretically that you want. For newer accounts, we will usually start somewhere in the realm of 5. That usually tends to be a good sweet spot. We want to have enough that we can start to get some spend going. We want to have enough that we can give Google some stuff to work with, maybe try and tackle some different outcomes. But we don't want to have so many campaigns that we spread the account way too thin and then none of them have a chance to succeed, especially because, sometimes to get people who are going to convert, so as an example, like someone who's going to buy tickets, you might need to spend a little bit more. Like that cost per click may end up being a little bit higher. It may end up being like, let's say $50 a click. If you're spending $50 a click, but this budget only has like $100 a day, that's a max of like 2 people you could get, right? You might not like that. Whereas if you could expand the budget for that campaign to like, you know, $300 a day, then all of a sudden now we've got 6 people we could work with. And that's like going to be a better outcome for your organization. So there isn't one hard and fast number, but I think what you want to be looking at is like, if it's a new account, let's give it some breathing room so that it can spend, see which ones are spending and figure out if we like the way the account is spending and then adjust from there. If it's an established account, we look for, first of all, is there breathing room in our budget? If not, how do we create breathing room before we add new ones? All right. So that is going to bring us to the end of our webinar today. I really appreciate everybody's time, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their day. And you guys should get the recording right after this. So if you joined late, if there's anybody else who you think needed to see this, you can feel free to send it their way, and they can watch it as well. All right. Thanks, everybody.